The Alamo fell in 90 minutes. But those 90 minutes created a rallying cry. Remember the Alamo, precisely because of its shocking brutality. The killing of prisoners in violation of all military honor of the era didn't crush the rebellion. It ignited it. What if you knew before a single shot was fired that your enemy wasn't just coming for victory, but for total extermination? This is the untold prologue to the Battle of the Alamo. Not a story of a last stand, but of a first calculated move designed to crush hope before the siege even began. But before we continue, please like and subscribe to our channel to support our growing community. On February 23, 1836, as General Santa Anna's army arrived in San Antonio, he didn't just order his troops into position. He sent a message. A blood-red flag was raised over the San Fernando church, and with it, the haunting notes of the Degüello bugle call cut through the air. This was no simple military signal. In Spanish tradition, it meant one thing: no quarter, no surrender, no prisoners. Inside the Alamo, about 189 defenders watched this unfold. Under the military rules of the time, if a fortified force surrendered, they could expect to be taken as prisoners of war. But Santa Anna had already ripped up the rulebook. He classified these men not as soldiers, but as pirates, traitors, insurgents. And under his own twisted legal interpretation, that meant they deserved no rights and certainly no mercy. But here's what's shocking. Santa Anna's own officers argued against him. Men like Colonel Juan Almonte pleaded for clemency. They said taking prisoners would encourage future surrenders and save lives on both sides. Santa Anna's response was cold, brutal, and absolute. Every defender must die. This was a deliberate choice, a weapon of psychological warfare. So when Mexican forces finally breached the walls on March 6th, the fight wasn't just a battle. It was a foretold execution. The Degüello wasn't just playing in the background. It was a promise being kept. Surrender was not an option. The goal was more than victory. It was to create a symbol of terror so powerful it would stamp out the Texas Rebellion for good. March 6, 1836, 5:30 a.m. After 13 days of listening to the chilling Degüello call, a nightly reminder that surrender meant nothing, the final act at the Alamo begins. Santa Anna sends 1,800 men in 4 columns, attacking from all sides, against fewer than 200 defenders. This isn't just a battle. It's an overwhelming tide. The exhausted men inside fight with everything they have. Muskets become clubs, knives, swords, bare hands. The thick adobe walls that protected them now trap them in a nightmare of smoke, darkness, and close-quarter horror. But what happens next crosses a line from combat into something else. As Mexican troops pour in, some defenders, seeing the hopelessness, try to surrender. A few officers on Santa Anna's own side, like Colonel Juan Almonte, try to stop it, arguing these men should be taken as prisoners of war. They are ignored. The orders from the top were absolute: leave no one alive. And so, in the plaza, the barracks, and especially within the walls of the chapel, the killing continues after the fighting should have stopped. Wounded and unarmed men are executed with bayonets and swords. This is where the legend of men like Davy Crockett meets a brutal reality. Mexican officer José Enrique de la Peña, in his diary, wrote that Crockett and a handful of others were captured alive, only to be brutally executed on Santa Anna's direct orders. De la Peña called it a spectacle of horror that troubled even the hardened soldiers who carried it out. William Barrett Travis had known this was a fight to the death. In his famous letter, he wrote he would never surrender or retreat. He understood Santa Anna's true goal, not just victory, but extermination, designed to terrify all of Texas into submission. The killing was over. But for Santa Anna, the battle wasn't. The final act of the Alamo wasn't fought with muskets or swords, but with fire. His order was direct and deliberate. Burn every defender's body. This wasn't about sanitation. It was a calculated message carved into ash and bone. In the Catholic tradition, followed by both Mexican soldiers and many Anglo settlers, proper burial was sacred. It was the key to eternal rest. Santa Anna wasn't just denying them a grave. He was targeting their souls. Francisco Ruiz, the mayor of San Antonio, was forced to oversee the grim task. He identified the famous leaders, Travis, Bowie, Crockett, before their bodies were dragged away. Soldiers built 2 massive funeral pyres, layering wood and corpses, even using cattle grease to fuel the flames. The fires burned through the night of March 6th and into the next day. The entire town was forced to witness the smoke and smell. And here's the psychological warfare. Santa Anna wanted witnesses. He specifically spared a handful of survivors, like Susanna Dickinson, and sent her out with one mission. Tell everyone what you saw. Tell them about the slaughter, and tell them about the pyres. Tell them that resisting Mexico means you won't just lose your life. You'll be erased, denied peace, even in death. The piles of ash and charred bone were left for weeks, a grotesque landmark for every traveler passing through San Antonio. The message was clear, brutal, and designed to spread terror across Texas. This is the fate of rebels. But this victory came at a steep price. The assault had been brutal for Santa Anna's own army, costing hundreds of his best soldiers. And his terrifying display of cruelty? It didn't crush the spirit of rebellion. It poured gasoline on it. The story of the Alamo's defenders, of their fight, their sacrifice, and the desecration of their remains, became the fuel for a rallying cry that would echo just 6 weeks later at the Battle of San Jacinto. Remember the Alamo. Santa Anna believed his cruelty was a masterstroke, a final terrifying lesson that would end the rebellion. He was wrong. His brutality didn't end the Texas Revolution. It transformed it. Because just 6 weeks after the Alamo fell, on a field at San Jacinto, Sam Houston's outnumbered army unleashed a whirlwind. And as they charged, they didn't just yell. They roared a promise of vengeance. Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad, Goliad. If the Alamo was a battle-turned execution, Goliad was a pure cold-blooded massacre. 3 weeks after the Alamo, over 400 Texian soldiers who had surrendered under a promise of mercy were marched out and systematically shot on Santa Anna's direct orders. Their bodies were also burned. The message was undeniable. This was policy, a deliberate strategy of terror. Even Santa Anna's own officers, like General Castrillon, who had pleaded for mercy at the Alamo, saw it backfiring. They warned him he was creating martyrs, not submission, and at San Jacinto, that fury was unleashed. In 18 minutes of ferocious combat, Houston's men killed over 650 Mexican soldiers, many of whom were veterans of the Alamo assault. They fought with a rage that a conventional army couldn't withstand. Santa Anna, who had denied all honor to his enemies, was found the next day, hiding in the grass, disguised as a private, captured. The architect of the terror was now a prisoner. The contrast was complete. Santa Anna gave his own fallen soldiers proper honorable burial. The men of the Alamo and Goliad, only fire and ash. That intentional desecration didn't break Texas. It forged a new, unbreakable resolve. It turned a political rebellion into a visceral war of survival and gave them a battle cry powerful enough to win a revolution in 18 minutes. Remember the Alamo wasn't just about loss. It was the sound of a debt being paid in full. And so, the general who had refused all mercy, who gave the orders for fire and ash, now stood captive. He begged for the one thing he had never offered in his life. Sam Houston, in a moment of supreme strategic calculation, granted it. Not out of mercy, but because a living Santa Anna could order the full Mexican army to withdraw. Clemency, used as the ultimate weapon to secure a nation. The site of the Alamo still stands in the heart of San Antonio. But the story preserved there forces us to confront a dark question. What happens when military victory isn't enough? When a commander demands not just defeat, but the total degradation of the enemy? The nightly Degüello, the bayoneting of captured men, the pyres that burned for days. These were not battlefield necessities. They were deliberate policy, a calculated choice to weaponize brutality, to transform death into a terrifying spectacle meant to crush a rebellion. But history had a different lesson to teach. The ashes left near the Alamo walls didn't terrorize settlers into submission. They became sacred ground. Santa Anna sought to create symbols of fear. Instead, he created the very martyrs that ensured Texas independence. The refusal of surrender, the execution of prisoners, the denial of burial. These acts, intended to break a spirit, did the exact opposite. They forged one. The chasm between the two commanders is staggering. Santa Anna's wholesale brutality versus Houston's calculated clemency. One chose terror and created a rallying cry. The other accepted a prisoner and secured a republic. The defenders of the Alamo could not have known their fate, but their suffering, intended to inspire fear, instead ignited a revolution. It is the ultimate proof that a symbol, born in defiance and consecrated by sacrifice, can prove more powerful than any army.